This podcast episode is sponsored by Geekdom, San Antonio's entrepreneurship hotspot and co-working space. Whether you need one-time recurring or event space and conference rooms or podcast studio space, Geekdom has it all. Use code SOCIALBUTTERFLY when signing up for a membership to receive $25 off of monthly memberships. Welcome back to Unapologetically Visible, the podcast for high-achieving Latina and women of color founders who are done being the best kept secret. I'm your host, Christina Olivarez, award-winning visibility and leadership coach, TEDx speaker, and founder and CEO of the Social Butterfly Gal and Hustle and Socialize. It's my birthday! My birthday is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. So by the time this episode airs, I will officially be 35 years old. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I'm not going to lie. This birthday, this age feels extremely monumental, way more than the feelings that I felt when I had turned 30. And mind you, when I had turned 30, this was in 2021 when we were still in that mix of the pandemic. We were kind of coming out of the pandemic. And so that one was just a really kind of interesting time to be turning 30. But now I just feel like where I'm at in my life right now, that halfway point between 30 to 40, that 35 point is really asking more of me. And this season of life that I'm in, it's something that I have been just experiencing that has been like a lot of emotions and just very uncomfortable and very, very powerful. So I feel like I am in the in-between space right now. I feel like I'm on the cusp of a new chapter, which I have been talking a lot about ever since I had my robotic myonectomy in November of 2025, just about motherhood and, me being a CEO for the last 10 years and now going into a new decade of my business, the second decade where I've already had, 10 years of business, of entrepreneurship as a notch on my belt. And now I get to kind of move into the second decade. And so if I'm being really honest, I can really look back at the last 11 years in business and just what has transpired between 24 to now almost 35 now. And I can look at my life and my business and everything that I have built and say with full certainty that it worked. And I think sometimes that's really difficult because I know that there are still aspects of my business that I'm really trying to make better or tweak, or I feel like they're not working. And so it could feel like, well, how can I say that my business worked when I'm still in the middle of trying to figure out specific pieces? But that's the thing is it worked here 11 years later. And I've seen what leading sustainably looks like. And I've seen all of the things that have led me here to where some women, specifically Latina business owners, a lot of them maybe even get lucky to get to year 5. And so here I am now 11 years in. I can really say that it worked. And I do feel like my business worked, at least that first chapter in my 20s and in my early 30s. I feel like it worked because I knew how to move under pressure. In fact, I just really knew how to push, how to create that momentum, how to perform, how to just keep going when inside of you it's saying like, stop, stop, even when you're tired. And obviously, I didn't have a roadmap. So I do feel like that version of me, I fully respect and I give her her flowers because that girl got me to here. And I think now turning 35, respect that girl amazingly with deep respect. But I'm recognizing that she is not who I'm becoming. And that's the tension that I want to talk to you about today is this aspect of turning a new age, being in the middle of the decade of that age range, right? Between 30 and 40. I'm now in that middle. And I know that I'm not the only one that's experiencing this, whether you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. There is a very specific moment in your leadership where success starts to feel like something that you have to maintain instead of something that actually reflects you. And sometimes when you get to that moment in your leadership, you might feel like your visibility is a little off, or maybe things and projects that you would always feel excited about are not really aligning to the life that you're being called to live. And you're starting to notice that those decisions are taking a little longer than they used to, or you're just feeling not confident in your decisions. And so you start asking yourself questions like, am I still aligned? Or do I even want this anymore? And why does this feel heavier than it should? That's sort of where I'm at right now at 35. I've been grieving aspects of myself that no longer serve me. And I've been approaching my life throughout this last year with a little bit more softness. I have been questioning any types of conditioning that has been programmed into my brain about leadership and visibility and building a business and the hustle and the grind, and thinking about a different question about how would I want to lead in my next phase of my life and my next decade in business. And so there's this very quiet and very grounded kind of power that I'm still learning how to trust. And I'm realizing that you might be feeling the same way. You can build a life and a business. You can be successful by every single metric. And still one day you wake up and you realize that the things that you might have built are not fully aligned with you anymore. And that realization can either break you or it could recalibrate you. And that's all the work that I do too with my clients. But when we talk about recalibration, that's what this episode is about. Yes, I'm celebrating another year of life. I'm celebrating 35 years on this beautiful planet on the week that we have a historic moment happening right now where a woman who is named Christina is actually orbiting around the moon while I'm recording this episode. So it just feels very monumental. But I want to share with you some of the lessons that I have learned and accumulated throughout the last 35 years of life when it comes to visibility, leadership, and building a life and business that actually aligns and fits you in the now. So when I think about my visibility right now, I almost laugh at how I used to approach it, because I really believed in that notion of if you show up more, if you posted more and refined your content more, keyword being more, that eventually everything would click into place. And for that first half of, well, at least for the first decade, it worked. I was always showing up and being, the first person in the room, the last person in the room when it came to like networking and when it came to all of the investing and putting yourself out there and that visibility. There was times where there was no room to fuck up, if you can relate to that. And sometimes there felt like there was no point of excel. And that's when I was starting to feel it this year, where I was feeling the discomfort and the disconnect between the things that I was doing and the things that I was starting to believe now. Because no matter how visible you are, if it's not translating in the way that you are hoping it to be or wanting it to be, more is not necessarily the answer. And so what I am starting to understand a lot more, and the lessons that I've learned with my visibility, is it's not about how often that you show up. So no amount of times of me networking in the same networking circles or going to these events or showing up online, none of it was going to matter if I didn't really understand the ownership that it takes to be really precise in my visibility and to fully understand all of the different aspects of me and my energy and the time and the way that I was showing up, if it made sense for the season that I'm in. And I think that that is just a different energy that I'm starting to sort of recalibrate now, where I'm recognizing that there was a lot of times where I was taken advantage. There was a lot of times where I was around certain circles and I was recognizing that many people were wanting a lot from me. So I was doing a lot of like giving and I wasn't putting my visibility and my power in a position of receiving. And I take full ownership for that, because that right there is a full boundary that I didn't really recognize. And I think there comes that level of exhaustion of being like, well, I am being visible everywhere, but it's still not translating in the amount of money that I want, or the connections that I want, or the type of leadership that I want. And I fully take ownership in the boundaries that I had to now start implementing, and the way that I now see my visibility in a very different way. Because for a long time, I was thinking about my visibility more as a performance. I knew how to perform, I knew how to push through, I knew how to do all these things. And now I'm really seeing my visibility a little bit more of a responsibility to myself, a responsibility for the way I'm going to lead as a mom, as a CEO, and also thinking about it instead of a performance as a position. I am now positioning myself for high level visibility opportunities. And that means that I'm going to have to say no a lot more. And not only saying no, but I also have to be okay with the FOMO and the feelings that I would feel knowing that I could be in that room. I was going through it a couple of weeks ago where I was starting to recognize that I made a decision not to go to South by Southwest, and I made a decision to not invest in an event that I had gotten invited to. And I was doing that for my time and my energy. I was going to be traveling the next day. So I didn't want to be in a position where I was going back and forth, but I felt the FOMO. And that was because the other version of Christina, the one that I'm sort of grieving and the one that I'm kind of deconditioning myself, that other person, that other self was recognizing that that's what old Christina used to be programmed to be. My visibility is still as powerful now if I say no versus the proximity that I could be in if I would have said yes. And it's deconditioning that level of visibility that I thought, and being a little bit more precise and positioned for specific moments where I know a lot of my time, energy, resources, money is going to be spent on other aspects of me saying yes. So I do see my visibility as very different now at 35 than I did when I was in my 20s. I always think it's so funny how when I was in my 20s, I think I was at a networking event almost every single night, just trying to get my name out there. And of course, like I said, it worked at the time, but now homegirl is ready to be in bed by 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. She has no time driving on the highway anymore or driving back and forth so late. And so I think my visibility is definitely a little bit differently. So the lesson that I want you to kind of take from this is your visibility doesn't have to always include more of it. If you understand where your clients are coming from, where the connections are being formed and really deepening, if you can understand the aspects of your visibility ecosystem and understand how your visibility and your time and your energy really aligned with that ecosystem, and you position yourself for high valued visibility opportunities, that's when the game changes. So when I think about my leadership, this is the one that humbles me the most, because it has been the most humbling evolution for me. For the longest time, I never really felt like a leader. I think that growing up, I never really saw myself as a leader. When I was a teen, I just really didn't put myself in any type of leadership opportunity when I was in high school. I think I had my head in the clouds. In high school, I was very imaginative, and I think anybody who knows me knows that I'm obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. But when I was like a teenager, that was my whole world. And I wanted to live in Shondaland. In fact, I was a citizen of Shondaland, and nothing else mattered except the world of Grey's Anatomy and being in that. And so I feel like I started to understand a little bit more about leadership when I got to college, because you pretty much had to develop yourself as a leader. You had to learn deadlines. You had to learn how to not procrastinate. And I really do feel like my type A high achieving personality really came out in college. because I knew that I was there and I was determined to kind of hurry up and finish so that I could go be on camera and go live out my news reporting dream of being on E or Good Morning America. And so I feel like I really learned how to understand bits and pieces of what leadership had to offer. But I truly, truly believe that entrepreneurship changed the game with my leadership. And I think that I will always tell anybody that if you want a crash course in personal development, go become an entrepreneur. So many people cannot handle it because of the fact that it is a big risk. And I do believe that you do have to have some level of stability, whether it is a partner or you do have a loan or a line of credit or something that continues to build some stable ground, because entrepreneurship is like this. And I don't care if you've made $1 million or $0. No matter the game, entrepreneurship is a fucking roller coaster. And that's where your leadership and most importantly, your personal development is really tested. And so I feel like my leadership has truly evolved in many, many ways. I do feel like I'm learning how to make more smarter decisions. And so I'm learning how to discern a lot more in my leadership. And most importantly, I'm learning how to be a leader for myself. So before I can lead others or create some type of leadership environment with a team or other people that I serve and mentor, I have to learn what it means to be a leader to myself. So for me, I think the biggest lesson of leadership has been to understand how to fully connect with Christina outside of my business. So what does Christina love to do? What does Christina do for fun? How does she regulate? What are some things that make her so exciting and fun that have nothing to do with productivity or her content or her clients or her business? And it's that separation of, if I'm going to lead myself, that means that I need to understand how to build systems within myself. Not so much building routines, but like having a really great system that's going to anchor me when my nervous system is discombobulated. So what does it mean to actually get enough hours of sleep every night and to eat and fuel myself as a leader and to regulate and understand how to prioritize exercise and mental health and different aspects of my leadership? Because I think when we think about leadership, immediately it's like, oh, I'm being a leader to a team. But leadership is nothing like that. It's understanding how you can lead yourself. And I think that's what most people don't really talk about, is that this level of leadership, a lot of the times people are going to misunderstand you. And being okay with the choices that you make, with the decisions that you make, with the way that you are leading yourself for the betterment, not just of the company, but for the betterment of yourself. I think that is where number one, as a lesson I've learned, is to quiet the noise and start trusting my gut and start trusting myself and not seeking external validation. You have to be able to understand how to lead yourself, and you have to be able to understand how to trust yourself. And when you get to uncertain times, you have to stay as present, as regulated, as focused, and you have to learn how to lead while fearing. So you have to go with the fear, leaning into that fear, and learn how to stay certain when things are uncertain. When I think about money and value, oh my God, this is one that I've had to learn the hard way, because I have money wounds. And, I think many of us have generational trauma around money. And, some of us are the first in our family to ever have wealth or to create generational wealth. And so this is one that I've really had to learn very, very hard how to understand it operating with money and managing money and understanding like the root causes of certain things around money. When I was 24, didn't really have a system for understanding how to manage my money. I always thought that, hey, you get paid, it's in the bank account, like that's yours, right? And so understanding profit first, tracking your finances, tracking what you spend per month, just like understanding all of the things is something that I feel has been a true lesson of my life. And I think it just really requires you to understand numbers and also to detach your personal worth from the amount of money that you're making or your worth from anything that is tied to productivity in your business. So if there's a lesson that I would love to share with you about anything money related is to one, don't be afraid of your numbers. Money is your friend. Make it your friend. Understand that it might leave, but it's always going to come back. Treat it like a friend. Be kind to it and really understand that you are learning as you go. And it is okay if you do not have all the answers when it comes to money. But what you do have and what you can control is the systems and the processes that are going to help you understand it a little bit more. When I think about my identity as a 35-year-old woman CEO who is, pursuing motherhood and understanding what it's like to be a leader in that aspect and how motherhood is going to change my identity, I think that is one that feels a little disoriented right now. And I think so many of the women that are listening, whether you are moms or empty nesters or making a decision to not have kids, whatever choice you decide, I think we always think about our identity and what that looks like and what that means. And I think for me, one of the lessons that I'm just really learning with my identity is that it is always going to be shifting and changing. And I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable around my identity. And I think that there's a lot of us where we try to hold on to the identities and the things that we have built our lives around when it comes to who we are at our core. I mean, obviously, we know who we are at our core, but life is always going to be shifting and changing. And I think the one thing that I've had to learn, not, just in this whole year, is my identity is always going to be changing and shifting. Who I am at my core is my core, but I also have to understand that it is okay to not feel aligned anymore with the things that you thought you wanted at a specific age or a specific season of your life. And also, as humans, we are always going to be growing and evolving. And when I think about losing myself, whether it's in my work, in motherhood, in my life, I think it's ultimately understandable that is just evolving, right? You don't ever lose yourself. You're just gonna keep evolving. And I think that my understanding of that is to understand how to grieve, to understand how to let go, but also let going of the grief and the let going. So like understand that there's a time and the place for grieving, and then there's a time and the place for integration. And what does that look like? And integrating into and stepping into the new person that you're becoming. I feel like my identity in my business has always evolved from time to time. I'm not the same person as I was at 24 as I am now at 34, going now 35. And I think that that's something so beautiful is there is this grief in outgrowing versions of yourself. And there's a grief in realizing that you can't go back to the way it used to be or the way you used to think, the way you used to move. But there is also freedom in that. So if there's a lesson that I can share about identity in the last 35 years is accepting that reinvention is always going to be required. You just have to stop resisting it. You have to stay comfortable with recognizing when it's time to reinvent yourself. And you also have to start allowing yourself to become the new version of who you are going to become. I definitely believe in everything happens for a reason. There is an aligned timing for everything. I always tell myself I am always on time and I'm always aligned. And Matthew McConaughey says that in his book. And I took that from him. I'm always on time. I'm always aligned. And I think about just my life and the alignment that I've had where certain things, it was the right time for the right thing to happen, to come into my life. And I think that there's a part of me that just knows that even though sometimes I get really, really frustrated, that I feel like I'm not where I want to be, I know that right now in this current moment, I am where I'm supposed to be. And that is also freeing and uncomfortable. And I wrote this on Instagram where I do struggle with that notion of you are right where you are meant to be, because sometimes I look at my life and I'm like, why is this where I'm meant to be? Like, I want to be where that person's at. Like, I want this, I want that. And that's where comparing yourself is like the worst. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I always try to remind myself. But then I also remember like things come in its due time. And so you are never late. You're always on time. And right now in this current moment, you will only ever be this age in this current moment. And so I try to just embrace life and take that as it comes. So I just feel so much gratitude right now. I want to say, turning 35 is really exciting. I'm so excited for what this year is going to hold for me. And I'm so grateful that you get to be a part of this journey. I want to thank you for listening to these episodes. I want to thank you if you have ever invested in my work, whether that is coaching, speaking, anything that you've ever invested in the last 11 years of my business. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I want to thank you for being a part of my life and in my journey, and for being a witness to 35. And if there's anything that I can leave you with right now, is this kind of like moment, this question that I've been sort of sitting in as I turned 35. And it's just thinking about, what would my most highest self be doing right now? What type of life do I want to have and I want to lead? And what level of peace and ease and stability and flow and joy am I calling in? And that's what I really want to leave with. So at 35, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited for what this year has to offer. And again, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be in my orbit, my ecosystem. And thank you so much for just being here. And thank you for another year of life. If you resonated with this episode, here's what I want you to do next. Subscribe and leave a review, because that helps this podcast reach more women like us, women who are never meant to stay hidden, women who are meant to be highly visible leaders. Share this episode with someone you love who is in the middle of a birthday or is in the in between. And DM me on Instagram at the Social Butterfly Gal. Tell me your biggest reframe, your biggest breakthrough from today's conversation. And if you're feeling the call to go deeper, to recalibrate your personal brand, leadership, and your visibility, I would love to support you through one-on-one coaching. You can find the coaching information and offers in the links in the show notes below, or send me a DM with the word coaching, and I will personally walk you through what offers are in alignment with your current season and what it looks like to step into this next era with clarity, confidence, and unapologetic authority. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for all of the shares and reviews. Remember this: you didn't come this far to play safe. You came here to be unapologetically visible. I'll see you next week.